This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Brilliance Audio presents Watchers by Dean Koontz, performed by Eduardo Ballerini. On his 36th birthday, May 18th, Travis Cornell rose at 5 o'clock in the morning. He dressed in sturdy hiking boots, jeans, and a long-sleeved blue plaid cotton shirt. He drove his pickup south from his home in Santa Barbara, all the way to rural Santiago Canyon on the eastern edge of Orange County, south of Los Angeles. He took only a package of Oreo cookies, a large canteen full of orange-flavored Kool-Aid, and a fully loaded Smith & Wesson .38 Chiefs Special. During the 2.5-hour trip, he never switched on the radio. He never hummed, whistled, or sang to himself, as men alone frequently do. For part of the drive, the Pacific lay on his right. The morning sea was broodingly dark toward the horizon, as hard and cold as slate. But nearer shore it was brightly spangled with early light, the colors of pennies and rose petals. Travis did not once glance appreciatively at the sun-sequined water. He was a lean, sinewy man with deep-set eyes, the same dark brown as his hair. His face was narrow, with a patrician nose, high cheekbones, and a slightly pointed chin. It was an ascetic face that would have suited a monk in some holy order that still believed in self-flagellation, in the purification of the soul through suffering. God knows he'd had his share of suffering. But it could be a pleasant face, too, warm and open. His smile had once charmed women, though not recently. He had not smiled in a long time. The Oreos, the canteen, and the revolver were in a small green nylon backpack with black nylon straps, which lay on the seat beside him. Occasionally he glanced at the pack, and it seemed as if he could see straight through the fabric to the loaded Chief Special. From Santiago Canyon Road in Orange County, he turned onto a much narrower route, then onto a tire-eating dirt lane. At a few minutes past 8:30, he parked the red pickup in a lay-by, under the immense bristly boughs of a big cone spruce. He slipped the harness of the small backpack over his shoulders and set out into the foothills of the Santa Ana Mountains. From his boyhood, he knew every slope, vale, narrow defile, and ridge. His father had owned a stone cabin in Upper Holy Jim Canyon, perhaps the most remote of all the inhabited canyons, and Travis had spent weeks exploring the wild land for miles around. He loved these untamed canyons. When he was a boy, black bears had roamed the woods. They were gone now. Mule deer could still be found, though not in the great numbers he had seen 2 decades ago. At least the beautiful folds and thrusts of land, the profuse and varied brush, and the trees were still as they had been. For long stretches he walked beneath a canopy of California live oaks and sycamores. Now and then he passed a lone cabin, or a cluster of them. A few canyon dwellers were half-hearted survivalists who believed the end of civilization was approaching, but who did not have the heart to move to a place even more forbidding. Most were ordinary people who were fed up with the hurly-burly of modern life and thrived in spite of having no plumbing or electricity. Though the canyons seemed remote, they would soon be overwhelmed by encroaching suburbs. Within a 100-mile radius, nearly 10 million people lived in the interconnecting communities of Orange and Los Angeles counties, and growth was not abating. But now crystalline revelatory light fell on the untamed land, with almost as much substance as rain, and all was clean and wild. On the treeless spine of a ridge, where the low grass that had grown during the short rainy season had already turned dry and brown, Travis sat upon a broad table of rock and took off his backpack. A 5-foot rattlesnake was sunning on another flat rock 50 feet away. It raised its mean wedge-shaped head and studied him. As a boy, he had killed scores of rattlers in these hills. He withdrew the gun from the backpack and rose from the rock. He took a couple of steps toward the snake. The rattler rose further off the ground and stared intensely. Travis took another step, another, and assumed a shooter's stance, with both hands on the gun. The rattler began to coil. Soon it would realize that it could not strike at such a distance and would attempt to retreat. Although Travis was certain his shot was clear and easy, he was surprised to discover that he could not squeeze the trigger. He had come to these foothills not merely to attempt to recall a time when he had been glad to be alive, but also to kill snakes if he saw any. Lately, alternately depressed and angered by the loneliness and sheer pointlessness of his life, he had been wound as tight as a crossbow spring. He needed to release that tension through violent action, and the killing of a few snakes, no loss to anyone, seemed the perfect prescription for his distress. However, as he stared at this rattler, he realized that its existence was less pointless than his own. It filled an ecological niche, and it probably took more pleasure in life than he had in a long time. He began to shake, and the gun kept straying from the target, and he could not find the will to fire. He was not a worthy executioner, so he lowered the gun and returned to the rock where he had left his backpack. The snake was evidently in a peaceable mood, for its head lowered sinuously to the stone once more, and it lay still.